Picture this: Boston, 1920. The coffee is weak, the suits are boxy, and somewhere on a grimy street, there's a line of adults, actual grown adults, shoving cash through a window at a short Italian guy in a slightly too shiny suit. These are people who wouldn't loan their brother-in-law $20. They're handing this stranger their life savings because he promised to double their money in 90 days. No app, no algorithm, no AI, just vibes. That man was Charles Ponzi, the original financial genius who barely understood his own scam. And the worst part isn't that he fooled people 100 years ago when news traveled by newspaper and gossip. It's that he could pull the same trick today with a website and a half-decent logo and still have a line out the door. Charles Ponzi did not arrive in America as a mastermind. He showed up from Italy in 1903 with a few dollars, some broken English, and what he later described as $1 million in hopes. In modern terms, it's a guy getting off a budget flight with a dream and no plan. He bounced from job to job, usually fired, occasionally arrested, always broke. If LinkedIn had existed, his profile would have looked like a warning. Frequent career transitions, strong interest in other people's money. This is the man who would go on to lend his name to one of the most famous financial scams in history. Not because he invented it, just because he did it with such reckless enthusiasm that the universe apparently said, yes, this is the guy we're naming it after. Ponzi's big idea was wrapped in something that sounded smart enough to shut people up: international reply coupons. These were little postal certificates you could buy in one country and redeem 4 stamps in another. If exchange rates were off, you could in theory make money by buying them cheaply in one country and redeeming them in another where stamps were more expensive. That's called arbitrage. It's a real thing. But real arbitrage is like plumbing: complicated, unglamorous, and best handled by professionals. Ponzi's version was more like saying, I found a glitch in the matrix. Just give me your savings. Here's how he pitched it. He claimed he could get investors 50% profit in 45 days, 100% in 90 days, by exploiting this amazing opportunity in postal coupons. It was the financial equivalent of, I can turn water into wine, but only if you don't ask too many technical questions. It had just enough foreign words exchange rates, international coupons, Europe, to make people feel out of their depth. And since no one wanted to look stupid, a lot of perfectly intelligent people did the smart-looking thing. They nodded, pretended they understood, and wrote checks. At first, only a few brave souls tested him with small amounts. And, to everyone's surprise, they got their money back with huge profits. Of course they did. Ponzi paid the early investors using the money brought in by newer investors. No postal miracles, no secret trade, just a good old-fashioned shuffle. New money in, fake profits out, applause all around. The early winners told their friends, their neighbors, their co-workers. Suddenly, instead of just a trickle of cash through that office window, there was a flood. Very quickly, Ponzi went from random guy you step around on the sidewalk to financial wizard of Boston. He opened an office for his grandly titled Securities Exchange Company. People lined up outside. Local newspapers ran flattering stories. Middle-class families poured in savings that had taken years to build. Shop owners, clerks, professionals, widows, immigrants. If you had a pulse and some cash, you were invited. Even supposedly conservative, rock-solid New Englanders piled in. Because nothing says fiscal discipline like doubling your money for no clear reason. By mid-1920, Ponzi was taking in millions of dollars. Just that to today's money, and you're talking hundreds of millions. The man who couldn't stay employed for 5 minutes was suddenly buying a mansion, fancy cars, and tailored suits that screamed. I absolutely did not earn this the slow and boring way. He tipped generously, played the part of the generous genius. The public loved it. Honestly, if social media had existed, he would have been giving hustle mindset speeches on a podcast, talking about waking up at 4 a.m. to seize opportunities and think global. Now, the beautiful part about reality is that it eventually insists on being consulted. Some people started asking annoying things like, does this actually make sense? The Boston Post, which apparently had a few people who had met a calculator before, started pushing. They brought in experts. One of them did the unforgivable. He ran the numbers. If Ponzi was really making these returns using postal coupons, he would have needed to buy and redeem more coupons than actually existed. Not a lot of them. Literally more than the global total. That's not a red flag, that's a red billboard with sirens. As more questions piled up, regulators and banks grew nervous. The Massachusetts Bank Commissioner ordered audits. The press turned skeptical. Behind the scenes, it was exactly what every Ponzi scheme looks like when it starts to wobble. Constant scrambling to keep the illusion going. Old investors wanted to cash out. New investors needed to be recruited faster. And suddenly it always works. Started to look more like this is only working as long as no one panics. Eventually, the whole thing collapsed because math, unlike people, doesn't get seduced by confident speeches. When investigators finally tallied the mess, Ponzi had taken in around $20 million in 1920 money. That's hundreds of millions today. A lot of people were wiped out. Some lost everything. Ponzi went to prison, then tried fresh scams later in Florida, because once you've realized that reality can be ignored for a while, it's hard to go get a normal job. He died broke, bitter, and largely forgotten, except for the small detail that his name became shorthand for do not walk, run away. Now, somewhere along the way, you may have stumbled onto a viral YouTube video titled Ponzi, the financial idiot who scammed the world. The title is not wrong. What made Ponzi dangerous was not raw genius. It was his willingness to sell people the exact fantasy they wanted. High returns, low effort, no risk, and just enough complexity to make them feel clever for getting it. That same formula has shown up again and again, dressed in better suits with more believable PowerPoints. Fast forward almost a century and you meet Bernie Madoff, a man who proves that you can run a Ponzi scheme in a nice office with air conditioning and still be doing the exact same thing. Madoff didn't talk about postal coupons. That would have gotten him laughed off CNBC. Instead, he talked about sophisticated trading strategies, options, and steady returns. His pitch wasn't wild riches. It was calm, consistent gains that quietly beat the market every year. Think about how seductive that sounds. You don't have to take big risks. Just let me work my magic and deliver 10 to 12% a year, rain or shine. That sells perfectly to people who consider themselves cautious and sensible. It's like telling someone you can eat cake every day and still lower your cholesterol. It's an offensive idea that people want desperately to be true. Madoff had all the markers of respectability. He'd been chairman of NASDAQ. He mixed with the wealthy and the powerful. Charities and foundations trusted him. People weren't just investing for returns. They were investing in his reputation. Once again, early investors were paid religiously. The confidence grew. Friends brought friends, who brought their lawyers, who brought their dentists, who brought their golfing buddies. Entire communities ended up circling the same black hole. And just like Ponzi, most of the money being earned was simply money being passed from newer investors to older ones, while fake account statements showed tidy, made-up profits. When Madoff's scheme finally imploded during the 2008 financial crisis, tens of billions of dollars evaporated, retirements vanished, family fortunes disintegrated, charities folded, and once again the chorus began. How did so many smart people fall for this? As usual, the answer is not that they were dumb. It's that they really, really wanted the story to be true. Madoff, like Ponzi, was selling belonging as much as returns. With him, you didn't just get investments. You got status. My money is with Bernie. It sounded like a password into a quiet, exclusive club. If you were in, you were special. If you questioned it, you were out. This isn't just an American thing. Ponzi-style schemes have popped up everywhere, like financial weeds that thrive in any climate. In Eastern Europe, you had investment clubs offering ridiculous monthly returns. In parts of Africa and Asia, fraudulent gold, livestock, and micro-lending schemes promised guaranteed profit from community empowerment projects. In Latin America, double your money in 30 days programs swept through WhatsApp groups like chain letters. Except when you didn't forward these, it was your bank account that suffered, not your luck. Different languages, different sales pitches, same underlying structure. Pay the old investors with the new investors' money until the music stops and everyone realizes the chairs are imaginary. Then comes the tech era, which didn't kill Ponzi schemes so much as rebrand them. Now the sales pitch comes with slick websites, animated explicable videos, and words like decentralized AI-powered and quantitative yield strategy. Some crypto platforms offered absolutely heroic yields for simply parking your coins. Numbers that made normal returns look lazy. A few were genuine high-risk experiments. A depressing number were classic Ponzi structures argued in modern vocabulary. Early users were paid with deposits from later users. As long as the price of the token went up and new people kept arriving, it all looked brilliant. When that stopped, it looked exactly like every other collapse in the last 100 years. Stunned faces staring at numbers on screens that were suddenly just numbers. Strip away the costume changes, and the core of a Ponzi scheme is embarrassingly simple. There is no real underlying profit engine big enough to justify the promised returns. The profits paid to existing investors mostly come from the principal deposited by new investors. That's it. The foreign exchange talk, advanced trading strategies, postal coupons, secret algorithms, or revolutionary platforms are stage props. Behind the curtain, money is just being shuffled from the newcomers to the old-timers. Eventually, the inflow slows, withdrawals increase, and the whole thing comes crashing down. The red flags, like the scam itself, haven't evolved much. See promises of high, consistent returns with low or no risk, because apparently the laws of finance took a coffee break. You get vague, jargon-stuffed explanations that sound smart, but don't actually explain anything. You hear it's too complex to describe in a few minutes, which is salesperson code for, please don't think about this too hard. There's pressure to roll over your profits instead of withdrawing them, because once people start asking for cash back, the engine sputters. And often, there's a heavy dose of social proof. Neighbors, pastors, community leaders, old classmates who have already made money and would really prefer not to hear that it's all built on sand. Ponzi himself knew this. He started by targeting other Italian immigrants in Boston. These were people like him, same language, same background, same struggles in a new country. He sold it not just as an investment, but as a way for our people to get ahead in a world rigged against them. Sound familiar? Variations of that pitch show up constantly. Madoff leaned on tightly knit social and religious networks. Modern schemes lean on online influencers, Telegram groups, and subreddit hype. Scammers aren't sophisticated economists. They're sophisticated readers of human insecurity and ego. The uncomfortable part, and this is where the story stops being about those gullible people back then, it starts being about all of us, is that almost anyone can be pulled into this under the right emotional conditions. You have a long stretch of low interest rates, shrinking pensions, rising costs. In a gnawing sense that the traditional slow and steady path isn't enough. Along comes someone who says, "No worries, I've found a smarter way. You're not greedy, you're just tired of being left behind." That pitch lands. It's landed in 1920. It's landed in 2008. It's landing right now, somewhere in somebody's inbox. So could you, yes you, reasonably intelligent, life-experienced, over 40 viewer, ever fall for something like this? Fortunately, the honest answer is, under the wrong mix of trust, pressure, and timing, yes. Not because you'd fall for a guy yelling on a street corner about postal coupons, but because you might trust a coworker, a friend from church, a retired colonel, or a convincing YouTube expert with a whiteboard. It doesn't come at you wearing a villain costume. It comes wearing a face you recognize, or holding a story that fits your worries a little too perfectly. The good news is that avoiding Ponzi-style disasters does not require becoming cynical, joyless, and suspicious of every savings account. It just requires taking a deep breath when someone offers guaranteed no risk or can't lose, and letting a small internal alarm go off. Ask simple questions and insist on simple answers. Where is the money actually being made specifically? Who is regulating this? Has anyone independent looked at the books? If this is so safe and profitable, why isn't it being quietly eaten up by big institutions instead of being pitched in group chats and hotel ballrooms? If the answer is, you just don't understand, you have to trust the process. That is not a process. That is a trap with branding. What history gives you in stories like Ponzi's is not a fortune-telling device. It doesn't say on March 17, 2028, avoid a man in a blue tie. It gives you patterns, excitement, overconfidence, shortcuts, unraveling, regret, repeat. None of these schemes looked insane at their peak. Their peak, they looked obvious. People lined up outside Ponzi's office thinking they were seizing an opportunity. Madoff's investors went to bed thinking they were being careful and smart. Every generation has its own. This time it's different. Spoiler, It's almost never different. So, as you think about Charles Ponzi, the dumb but very confident immigrant who accidentally became the mascot of financial fraud, try not to file him away as ancient history. Think of him as the prototype, the original template, not a one-off freak event, but the first widely known version of a recurring bug in the human operating system, the desire for quick, painless solutions. The reason his name lives on isn't because he was unique. It's because what he did has been copy-pasted so many times that we needed a short word for it. In the end, Ponzi died almost as broke as the people he conned. Madoff died in prison. Many lesser-known operators are quietly serving time or pretending to be consultants now. The investors they hurt are left with something far more permanent than the scam itself, a lingering sense of shame and disbelief. How did I fall for that? The answer again is that they were human during a vulnerable moment. The best way to honor their losses isn't to crow about how you'd never be that stupid. It's to learn the pattern so that when the next charming financial innovator shows up with a shortcut, you can smile, nod, and keep your money in your pocket. History doesn't exist to scare you off every investment or to predict the next disaster on your calendar. It exists to give you a longer lens, so you can see that the thing being hyped as brand new has, in spirit, been tried before. Postal coupons, exclusive hedge funds, magical crypto farms, it's all one long line of people promising to rewrite gravity. Understanding that isn't about panicking, it's about relaxing. When you see this cycle, you don't have to chase every shiny thing or fall apart when one of them blows up on the news. You can say, ah, that again, and go back to choices that actually match your goals and your sanity. If this kind of slow, slightly sarcastic walk through the messier corners of financial history helps you feel a little more grounded and a little less easily dazzled, that's exactly the point. No hype, no panic, just context. Whenever you want more of that, more stories of money, mistakes, and the patterns underneath them, you'll always be welcome back here at Chill Financial Rewind.